On the edge of this once sleepy coastal town in Cambodia, a concrete fortress looms, tainted by allegations of fraud and exploitation.
We're in the car right now because it's not especially safe to be out.
This isn't just a getaway. This is a key gateway to global crime.
A number of grim reports have surfaced of the proliferation of scam compounds in the region. These are places where trafficked people are forced to scam people out of money in different jurisdictions around the world. What hadn't been explored was what infrastructure existed to allow for it. And I increasingly found that fingers were being pointed basically in one direction. You see a Huiwan Pay shop there?
It's called Huiwan, and government authorities say it's a one-stop shop for criminals.
The Treasury Department has moved to classify Huiwan as engaged in money laundering.
Huiwan is facilitating by far the largest dark marketplace that's ever existed.
It's really the Amazon for criminals.
It just blew my mind. Wow, this is another world.
The most brutal aspects of cybercrime are no longer just the work of disparate individuals. They're now connected by a streamlined industrial system using apps available to anyone. And according to authorities, one company sits at the center of it all.
So when I came here last, there was a big Huiwan sign. That has been taken down. There's no clear markings of what it even is now.
This is one of the headquarters for the Huiwan Group, a large Cambodian conglomerate offering financial services that, at least on the surface, appear clean.
Under the Huiwan Group umbrella, the first is Huiwan Pay, which is a payment services arm of the conglomerate. And in many ways, this is a very legitimate business. When you go to a Cambodian restaurant or a hotel or a convenience store, you'll find a QR code, often with the Huiwan logo. You can use your phone and an app to pay for a product with that QR code, and that is the public front of that subsidiary.
But the US government alleges that behind the scenes of Huiwan Pay is a cell called Huiwan International Pay, which they claim is involved in money laundering.
The script is somewhat familiar for how this all plays out. Let's say you're sitting in the US. You receive a random WhatsApp message from someone claiming that they want to get to know you, a fake romance. Once that scammer has taken funds from that victim, according to those that we've spoken to within Huiwan Pay, a scammer and a money mule will be matched together by somebody actually referred to as a matchmaker. So that money is then moved by a money mule into another account, and then offshore, and then into cryptocurrency. And once that entire chain has been completed, Huiwan will come in and take a commission for bringing the scammer and money mule together. The second arm of the Huiwan Group that's implicated with illicit activity is called Huiwan Guarantee. It is an online marketplace hosted on Telegram, the instant messaging app, in which buyers and sellers can meet and purchase, in many cases, illegal items.
Huiwan Guarantee sells everything that an online scammer needs to target and extract money from its victims all over the world. So that ranges from stolen personal data all the way through to receiving and laundering payments from victims.
What Huiwan has said in its defense is that all it does is serve as a guarantor, and that it can't moderate every single ad that's posted on Telegram within its channels.
Officials who've tracked the platform say with everything in the one place, scams can operate more efficiently and expand exponentially.
These marketplaces are vast. They can have thousands of merchants and hundreds of thousands of users overall.
The volume dwarfs anything that's existed at any other point in time.
All that first generation of darknet market, Silk Road, Alphabay, in total they did about $11 billion worth of transactions, whereas Huiwan Guarantee on its own did $28 billion. It's just absolutely enormous in terms of scale.
But proving Huiwan facilitates illegal activity is not as easy as it appears. Although registered as a privately owned business in Hong Kong, very little is known about its finances.
This is a company that doesn't want to be understood. It doesn't want to maintain a public persona, and it wants to be a bit of a black box.
But internal accounting documents seen by Bloomberg reveal how Huiwon International Pay kept meticulous records suggesting its employees may have actively brokered illegal deals.
Within the documents, there are cells devoted to each victim. It will have the amount of money that was taken from the victim. It will have the bank where money was wired to. So what we've been able to do with these documents is create a direct line from Huiwon to the victims who have fallen prey to scams, and also to the money mules who have been directly involved in moving those funds out of the US and converting them into crypto.
Huiwon operates in public telegram groups similar to chat rooms, where thousands openly buy, sell, and trade illicit goods and services, concealed only by the unique use of slang.
So there's a lot of activity here, lots of advertisements for different kinds of scams. So here you have one advertisement saying 直盘色料量大管饱来各种丝滑卡街马街. This is not how normal people would talk in Chinese. So here they're using the term 搬砖. That literally means moving bricks. You have 狗推, which literally means dog pushers. 精疗 refers to in-depth relationship building with the victim. In the Western media, people call it pig butchering. A person who doesn't understand anything about this industry would look at this and think it's all gibberish.
This sprawling ecosystem for criminal activity has come a long way since the early 2010s, when one young Vietnamese hacker gained access into the database of almost 200 million American identities.
I was making like 3 million USD by selling full information and US identities.
In Ingo's criminal past, he had to create his own website to advertise and sell the data he'd stolen and launder the profits himself. The framework Huiwon has created facilitates all of this.
Anybody nowadays can be a cyber criminal. It's a lot easier than before. This is one of these new Huiwon groups. And this group have 4,500 members. It's very simple. You just send a join request and immediately you got into the groups. And this group is related to money laundering, from 10 million to like at least 300,000 USDT. It's kind of like eBay or Amazon, like data, bank account, social media account. You can search in anything.
Investigators say there's a reason why the group chats are written in Chinese. Much of the criminal activity in these Telegram chats can be tied to China.
When you drive through Cambodia, you'll notice something almost immediately, which is that China has a large development presence in the country. So on the roads, many of the infrastructure projects will often be sponsored by Chinese companies. And China has become a very important political and financial backer to Cambodia's development. But that's really one piece of the answer for why China has such a stake in Cambodia. The cybercrime industry in Southeast Asia, these scam compounds, for example, are a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they're often underwritten by Chinese mafia members.
That direct relationship has been key to Huiwon's rapid growth, according to one UN report. It also says Cambodia is a major driver behind Southeast Asia's transformation into the world's fastest growing cyber fraud hub.
We're about to enter a part of the city called Chinatown, which is a pretty sketchy part of Sihanoukville. There are Chinese-run casinos here, a lot of security in and out of these compounds.
Human rights groups say thousands of trafficked people have been imprisoned on the floors above the casinos, held against their will to keep the scam operations running.
Here we have some of the electric batons, electric shackles that we saw for sale on Huiwon Guarantee. The advert mentions that these are for use on what they call runaway dogs, which is jargon for individuals that have escaped from scam compounds.
As a blockchain analytics firm, Elliptic could track the spoils from scams as they were converted into cryptocurrency, a trail that sparked a 2-year investigation.
This is probably one of the most complex pieces of research we've ever had to undertake. We came to the conclusion that the vast majority of transactions on this marketplace were illicit in nature.
We are going to Bartycka Street. We are looking for a company called Huayon Crypto.
In 2023, to circumvent Cambodia's complex crypto laws, people familiar with Huayon's operations say it established its very own cryptocurrency exchange known as Huayon Crypto. Not in Cambodia or China, but in Poland.
Czy to adres spółki Huayon, spółka ZO? Huayon Crypto? Halo? I introduced myself. I said I'm a journalist. He said, this is a virtual office. Goodbye. And just hanged up. I found tens, hundreds of companies with the same address. This is not illegal. So it's just a company renting a virtual address to pretend they operate here.
While virtual addresses like these are commonplace in legitimate business, gaps and inconsistencies in crypto regulation can also be exploited by criminals wanting to move money without detection. With other business branches in Singapore, Canada and the US, Huayon's tendrils stretch across the world.
This here is Panda Bank on the left-hand side.
Investigating Huayon further has only uncovered more mysteries.
Huayon has directors that also work as directors for other powerful conglomerates and banks in Cambodia.
Hun To, a director of Huayon Pay, is the cousin of Cambodia's prime minister. He's also a former director of Panda Bank, a major commercial financial institution in Cambodia. And another director of that bank is He Yen-ming, the listed owner of Huayon Crypto.
This is potentially the tip of the iceberg. It raises this broader issue of, is Huayon acting alone? How deep does this really go? And that's a question we don't know how to answer yet.
According to Elliptic's research, the Huayon Group entities, which include Huayon Pay, Huayon Crypto and Huayon Guarantee, have received over $91 billion in crypto assets in the last 5 years alone. Since Elliptic published their research in July 2024, steps have been taken to put pressure on Huayon.
Telegram has taken action and has shut down most of the channels used by Huayon Guarantee. Tether's USDT stablecoin is accepted on Huayon Guarantee. We have seen Tether freeze wallets, both on the instruction of law enforcement, but also based on their own investigations.
The other more significant step from international agencies was taken by the US. The Treasury Department has moved to classify Huayon as a foreign entity engaged in money laundering and effectively blacklist it from US markets.
In this underworld, though, survival is built into the system. Moderators from old Telegram groups have directed business to other marketplaces, including one Huayon owns a direct stake in. Huayon has also developed its own stablecoin known as USDH, which will evade anyone trying to freeze their wallets. And as of June 2025, Huayon Crypto appears to have rebranded itself as KEX. According to Chainalysis, Huayon's transaction volumes remain as high as ever, and a number of reports suggest its operations continue largely uninterrupted.
It's basically a game of whack-a-mole. For every Huayon that's taken down, another one sprouts up. And the scariest part of all of this is that this isn't some dark corner of the internet where you have to be in the know to access it. This is something that anyone can participate in. This is all in the open.
August 15th, 2023, hundreds of police officers launched pre-dawn raids across Singapore.
10 foreigners were arrested. They are being accused of laundering gains from organized crime.
This was a big news story just by the sheer amount of assets involved.
Cryptocurrencies, cash, luxury cars, homes.
It has now become the biggest money laundering case in Singapore's history.
It equals to about $2 billion US.
For decades, the Asian city has welcomed foreign money, resulting in it becoming one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. But beyond all the legitimate investment, Singapore's openness is now under scrutiny. In the latest case, for attracting billions of dollars of allegedly dirty money, some of it even funneled through the world's biggest banks.
This is drawing the attention onto the kind of loopholes that potentially have allowed this massive amount of wealth to have been accumulated.
The origin of the accused has also shone a light on global money flows and whether Singapore has done enough to police them.
The suspects are all from China or have links to China.
Singapore is a small country, so it is an economy that cannot sustain domestic consumption the way bigger countries like China or the US can. And that's why investments are critical to Singapore's growth.
There's great ease in living and staying here, especially for expats.
Singapore has long capitalized on its reputation to attract the global rich. Crime is low, politics stable, and banks welcoming. Wealth flows into Singapore totaled $1.5 trillion in 2022.
In terms of assets parked in Singapore, it is the third largest, only after Switzerland and Hong Kong.
But this flood of money has also come with downsides as the country has become more affluent. Skyrocketing prices and growing wealth inequality have become contentious issues in the city-state.
If you look at polls right now, some of the top issues that people mention is the problem of housing affordability. Singapore is the most expensive city in the world to own a car. There is a danger that this resentment and unhappiness starts to be conflated with the issue of a lot of these foreigners coming in.
A sizable amount of the money coming into Singapore is from China. Since 2019, investment has risen 79% to 19 billion Singaporean dollars. This exodus of wealth is partly down to President Xi Jinping launching a drive for what he calls common prosperity, a policy to redistribute wealth.
In the past decade, the Chinese government has tightened many regulations, and also we have seen many crackdowns on various businesses. Also, the strenuous restrictions during the pandemic also prompted many Chinese to leave home in search of a safer place. Why Singapore? Chinese Mandarin is one of the 4 official languages. The majority of the ethnic groups in Singapore are Chinese people.
Signs of Chinese wealth are all over Singapore, from high-end clubs to car dealerships and even golf clubs.
Singapore has always been of great attraction to the ultra-rich. It is not just Chinese that have flocked to Singapore in recent years. You have people like Ray Dalio, James Dyson, who have essentially set up family offices here to come manage their wealth.
It's instruments like these that have been exploited and seen alleged criminals find ways to deposit their money in Singapore. Family offices are private, loosely regulated companies set up by the ultra-rich to manage their investments. In the same time period that China started its strict pandemic lockdowns, the number of single-family offices in Singapore tripled.
It is a business that Singapore government has promoted over the years and set up ecosystem like lawyers, banks to support family offices. Of course, when you have a lot of money flowing in, no matter how strict the regulation is, some bad apples do flow in.
What we know about the 10 alleged criminals?
Some of them have been on China wanted list since 2015 or 16 for online gambling operations, which is illegal in China.
All of them came to Singapore in the past few years to basically set up businesses here.
Some suspects said that they have been advised to set up a family office as a means to stay in Singapore.
Many suspects also set up companies.
What one can do is to hire a local citizen or a permanent resident to be a director and a secretary to the company.
For a few of these accused, they had a corporate secretary who essentially had a few hundred businesses under their names. During the process of our investigations, we found a company that can help you to set up a business in Singapore within 24 hours.
Officials are examining whether loopholes or weaknesses in the system allowed the suspects to move their money to Singapore. When they arrived, they didn't exactly live modest or quiet lives.
All of these suspects lived in highly coveted real estate in Singapore. We are talking about places that are the equivalent of Mayfair in London or Central Park in New York.
All the charges brought against the suspects related to money laundering and forgery. So far, none of them have been convicted of a crime, and some have said they'll fight the charges in court.
We have to be very careful, we have to be very discreet, keep it small, but examine the links and then move in so that the money doesn't move out of Singapore. We do have evidence that shows clearly when they brought the money in, there were forged documents being used to justify the provenance of the funds.
After the arrest, the government said they are setting up an interministerial committee to look whether there are gaps in any part of the government that allowed illicit money to come to Singapore.
That's something that is faced not just by Singapore, but by all major financial centers. $2.8 billion was seized across the whole ecosystem, right? And of which I think about 1.5 billion was also found in the financial services sector. So we have to ask ourselves, what can we do better?
Questions are also being asked about who might have enabled the movement of allegedly tainted money. The suspects had held funds in more than 10 financial institutions in Singapore, including major Western banks Credit Suisse and Citigroup.
As far as my system is concerned, the system is clean, the system did what it was supposed to do. If my system had been corrupted,
then you'd be in trouble.
Then I'm in trouble.
The essential question for not just Singapore, but any financial hub is how much is the cost and how much is the risk that you are willing to take in order to attract the wealthy and businesses, while at the same time maintaining the amount of safeguards in order to deter potential illegality from coming in.
In today's India, trading can be a real song and dance.
Over the last few years, we have seen a significant rise in retail participation in India's booming equity markets.
Up until last year, growth in India overtook major markets across the world. Here's the S&P 500, and here's India's MSCI index outpacing it. But recently, the market's taken a turn.
The Indian stock market is headed for the worst month in a couple of years.
Well, stocks in India have wiped out, though, over $1 trillion from their market value.
Despite the volatility, retail investors in the world's most populous country are still pouring money into the market.
I'm not worried at all about India's current market downturn. In fact, I see it as a very, very good opportunity.
This has regulators on edge, especially as unscrupulous opportunists exploit those new to trading. So, what's led to this boom in everyday investors in India, and why is it making regulators worried? First, let's take a look at what's behind the surge of retail investors jumping into India's capital markets.
If you look at the number of trading accounts, it has grown fourfold in the last 5 years and is now nearing 200 million accounts.
And it's not just about the number of sign-ups. Individual investors, together with mutual funds, own roughly 18% of India's equity market and surpass the share of foreign investors for the first time since 2006.
If you look at mutual funds, the equity assets under management that they've been holding has also grown more than 4 times in the last 5 years.
India's always had strong retail participation in its equity markets. If you look back 25 years ago, retail investors were the largest proportion of this market, except at that time, it was very, very rich Indians and large broker-dealers. What you're seeing play out today is a more broad-based secular trend that in many ways defines the financialization of savings in India.
The country's expanding middle class traditionally saved in real estate, precious metals, or cash. But now,
Indian households, including young Indians, which is now the largest demography in the country, are preferring to put their earnings in better yielding instruments like equities. They now know that they want to invest towards their retirement, and so therefore their investment horizon is more long-term.
experts liken it to the US in the 80s and 90s after the introduction of a 401k retirement plan. A nascent desktop internet helped spread knowledge about investments to an eager American population. The mobile equivalent is alive in India today.
The pace at which many countries access technology was a slow and gradual growth, from computers to then laptops to mobile phones. But in India, the vast majority got access to the internet directly through smartphones. Those have enabled them to go into social media, learn about investing, get registered with discount brokers, and start investing as soon as possible. Another important change was the introduction of eKYC.
That stands for Electronic Know Your Customer, and it's the next big catalyst behind India's retail investor boom. With eKYC, instead of having to physically go to a brokerage armed with papers and ID cards, rookies could do it anywhere. Their IDs are already linked to a bank account and show their date of birth and home address. New investors just need to upload it, snap a selfie, and sign on the dotted line. Once the account is approved, trades can be made for as little as 100 rupees, or just over $1. Apps like Zerodha contributed to that surge in sign-ups to trading accounts we saw earlier, one of which caught the attention of 23-year-old Joseph Shaz.
As a young boy, I always wanted to find ways where I could make much higher returns for the money that I had. So as soon as I turned 18, and I started investing with Zerodha, using the pocket money that I got in college. My stock market investments would be around 90% of my total assets. I choose companies which I personally know of, or at least I understand the business of. 60-70% of my investments are in the financial sector. My investment strategy on how I place my investments is I go in with the potential that I'm going to remove this fund maybe after 20 years.
While investors like Joseph are betting on the market's long-term potential, others may be distracted by what's happening right now.
Does the bull run in Indian stocks have further to run, or are we looking at a pullback at this point?
We saw earlier that Indian stocks overtook global peers for years since the start of the COVID pandemic. But look what happens when we extend that timeline into this year.
We've seen a significant fall in India's stock market indices, the benchmark indices, as well as in select stock prices.
The benchmark Nifty index had fallen to about 16% from the top that we saw on September.
So what's caused that? Well, firstly, foreign investors.
They've sold more than $15 billion worth of stocks. For a variety of reasons, China looked more interesting last year because Chinese markets and equities had become much cheaper, on account of their economic downturn.
In the meantime, India's growth is also slowing, raising concerns that the consumption boom, which contributed to India's stock market surge, is coming to an end. Another factor was that Indian companies began to look overvalued. Last year, total market value of the stock market in India reached a record high of 140% of its GDP, much more than the 12-year average of 86%.
There are many small and mid-cap companies who are coming to market to do IPOs, but not with maybe the best of fundamentals underlying their businesses.
A case that grabbed a lot of attention was the IPO of Resourceful Automobiles Limited. The company operated just 2 dealerships and had an employee count of less than 10. And this issue was subscribed more than 400 times in India.
That means demand for new shares was 400 times higher than that which was actually available. It was a sign of overheating or inflation of the market, which isn't sustainable. To seasoned market players, this might all look like your classic boom cycle, but India's boom wasn't driven primarily by seasoned pros. With this boom market, there was also a rise in scams targeting fresh investors.
There have been several high-profile cases where people have been lured into the market, promised really high returns, and they ended up giving away their money to brokerages that never existed in the first place. It is not just people who are uneducated that are falling into these scams. It is coming from cities, villages, and there are many people who have taken loans to invest.
There was also a surge in influencers who encourage risky trading, often as all or nothing bets on future share prices. Last year, SEBI, India's security market regulator, published an eye-opening report that suggested 93% of such investors incurred losses. It also imposed rules to limit speculative trading. And just look at the effect it had. Here's the number of options contracts being traded over the last 5 years. Then SEBI's report landed and options trading plunged. Volatility tests investors, and a world of strained alliances and economic uncertainty will challenge India's investors keenly.
On the one hand, we have impending tariffs that are likely to be levied by President Trump. And then on the other hand, we have China that continues to export, and many Indian businessmen are worried about dumping by China in the Indian economy.
India's economic growth is set to hit a 4-year low this year. The rupee slid to record lows against the dollar and is likely to remain under pressure.
You've got earnings growth for the current financial year, which is kind of very, muted, like low single digits. Until you see that recovery to justify the valuations, there isn't a huge catalyst at the moment for India.
While investors like Joseph hold on to India's growth narrative, regulators are finding it increasingly difficult to shield markets from rising economic uncertainty.